What happens when brothers, born of the same womb, turn their hearts to enmity? Can the blood of kin be severed by pride and ambition, leaving a chasm that echoes through millennia? What curse rides on the wind when the love of God is rejected in favor of rivalry, revenge, and the lust for dominion? In the burning heat of the desert, the tents of Esau's descendants flicker like dying flames under the relentless sun. Edom, the land of red rock and crimson sands, stands defiant against the horizon, its warriors ready, its eyes wary. Across the valleys, the children of Jacob march, bearing banners not of conquest, but of covenant. Yet even as the Levites chant their sacred hymns, a shadow stirs in the hills, a shadow of betrayal, a shadow that whispers, "Today, your brother's blood will stain the earth." The wind howls through the jagged cliffs of Seir, carrying tales of ancient grievances. Centuries old, these stories were sown at birth. Tales of Isaac's blessing, of Esau selling his birthright for a fleeting meal, of a mother's cunning that would shape the destinies of nations. The mountain passes tremble as Edom's cavalry descends like a storm of dust and iron, meeting the tribes of Israel who stand trembling yet resolute. The clash is not just of swords and shields, it is of souls, a spiritual reckoning written before the foundations of the world. And yet, in the midst of this tumult, the prophets of old cry out, their voices piercing the veil of time. Edom will be consumed, her pride humbled, but the covenant of Jacob shall endure, though rivers of blood flow between them. The desert sands drink deep of the anger, yet they do not forget the covenant promises etched in the heavens. Every stone, every canyon, seems to whisper of destiny, warning that this enmity is no mere feud. It is a cosmic struggle, a mirror of the eternal battle between the righteous and the proud. Look to the mountains, to the valleys, to the crimson rivers of dawn, and know this: the rivalry of Edom and Israel is more than history. It is prophecy, alive and breathing, echoing in every clash of nations, every act of treachery, every trembling heart that wonders if justice will ever prevail. The blood of brothers, spilled across ages, calls to us from the pages of Scripture and from the storms of the present. This is not merely a tale of the past. This is the voice of warning, the drumbeat of destiny. What has begun in the desert will echo across the centuries. The hatred of Edom toward Israel, born from birthright and pride, is more than family discord. It is a shadow over nations, a warning to all who think blood ties can suppress divine purpose. History has begun its march, and prophecy, relentless and unyielding, unfolds before our eyes. Long before the banners of nations were unfurled, long before swords carved paths through the deserts of Edom and the hills of Israel, the story of these brothers was written in the dust of God's own creation. Isaac, the beloved son of Abraham, walked the plains of Canaan, carrying the weight of a covenant that would stretch across centuries. From his union with Rebekah, 2 sons were born: Esau, whose skin was as red as the desert sands he would claim, and Jacob, the quiet schemer, whose hands would shape the destiny of Israel. Even in the cradle, rivalry whispered between them. Esau, the hunter, strong and favored by the father. Jacob, the dreamer, chosen in secret by the promises of heaven. It was a tension born of divine design, for God's ways are often hidden in mystery. The older shall serve the younger. The covenant shall not follow the path of strength, but the path of purpose. And so the seeds of enmity were sown, carried not only in blood, but in destiny itself. Edom's lands, jagged and scarlet, became the domain of Esau's descendants. Their homes were built upon cliffs that scraped the sky, their lives hardened by the rocks and the sun. They were warriors forged by the desert, accustomed to survival, to independence, to claiming what was theirs with iron will. Meanwhile, Jacob, renamed Israel, after wrestling with the angel of the Lord, would lead his children through trials and migrations, through famine and favor, growing into a nation marked by covenant, prophecy, and divine purpose. The Bible records the dividing of bloodlines not as a mere genealogical account, but as a map of destiny. Esau's lineage, the Edomites, spread south and east, controlling trade routes, guarding mountain passes, becoming both a shield and a thorn for the Israelites. Jacob's lineage, the 12 tribes of Israel, settled in the land promised by God, a land flowing with milk and honey, yet ever contested, a land whose hills and valleys would witness triumph and tragedy alike. Even the patriarchs understood that family was more than flesh. It was covenant and conflict intertwined. The sale of the birthright by Esau for a bowl of lentils was not just an impulsive act of hunger. It was a moment that rippled through eternity. The blessing stolen by Jacob under the guise of deception was not merely a trick of human cunning. It was a divine orchestration, a herald of a world in which the chosen path is often hidden beneath trials, and in which the younger shall inherit the promise. As centuries passed, the two nations, though separated by geography, remained intertwined in fate. Marriage alliances, trade, and occasional peace treaties could never erase the echo of their origin. Every canyon in Edom, every river in Israel, carried whispers of that first rivalry, reminders that the land itself bore witness to the covenant, to the betrayal, and to the divine purpose that shaped history. Prophets would later speak of Edom with fire in their words. Terrible shall be the day of the Lord against all the nations, against Edom, whom he has punished in the past. These were not mere threats. They were historical truths interwoven with divine foresight. The enmity born at birth was now etched into prophecy, a warning to all who would think themselves secure in power, wealth, or ancestral pride. The desert winds carried more than dust. They carried the memory of choices, of destiny fulfilled, of divine plans that no human rivalry could undo. And so, the ancient origins of Edom and Israel are more than genealogy. They are the blueprint of a drama that spans the ages. Brothers turned enemies, bloodlines divided, yet both bound by the invisible threads of divine decree. From the cradle of their fathers to the hills of their descendants, the story of Edom and Israel is a testament to the enduring power of covenant, to the weight of choice, and to the inexorable march of destiny that even kings and warriors cannot escape. The rivalry that began in a tent in the hills of Canaan would echo through empires, through wars, and through the pages of prophecy, reminding all who hear it that history is never merely history. It is the living voice of God, speaking across time. The first clash between Edom and Israel was not merely a battle of men. It was a clash of destinies, a collision written in the heavens, long before spears touched the earth. The sun rose over the valleys of Judah, casting long shadows on the ancient rocks where the Edomites had gathered. Dust swirled like spirits of the past, whispering of betrayal, of blood spilled by brothers who could not forgive. Israel's armies, though fewer in number, moved with a sense of divine purpose. Their banners bore the symbols of covenant. Their hearts carried the prayers of generations. Yet even the bravest warriors felt the weight of history pressing upon them. Across the pass, Edom's forces stood, proud and unyielding, hardened by the unforgiving terrain of their mountains. Their eyes burned with the memory of ancestral pride, their hands eager to claim what they believed was their birthright. The clash began not with words, but with the clash of swords, the cries of men echoing like thunder through the canyons. It was as though the very earth shook in recognition of the feud's ancient roots. Prophets of Israel, standing on the ridges, raised their voices. The Lord shall judge Edom. The day of vengeance is upon them. The words cut through the noise of battle like a divine sword, striking fear and awe into the hearts of all who heard. And yet, Edom did not falter. They had inherited more than land. They had inherited the fierce independence of Esau himself, a stubbornness that refused to bend before history or heaven. The fight was brutal, each strike a reminder of the first deception, each shield a testament to survival against overwhelming odds. Blood stained the rocks red, a mirror of the red birthright and the red sands of Edom. This first prophetic clash was more than a physical confrontation. It was a spiritual reckoning. The angels of the Lord were present, unseen, moving among the tribes, turning hearts, guiding strikes, protecting the covenant people, while testing the pride of Edom. Every arrow loosed, every shield raised, carried weight far beyond the battlefield. The battle became a living parable, pride against purpose, flesh against destiny, wrath against covenant. In the end, victory did not belong to the strongest army, but to the one aligned with the divine plan. Edom retreated to their mountains, licking wounds and nursing resentment. Yet the prophecy had been fulfilled. The covenant of Israel endured, their survival proof that God's hand guides the outcome of even the fiercest conflicts. Prophets recorded this clash not as mere history, but as warning and instruction. Edom shall be defeated, yet the Lord's judgment is patient. He remembers the arrogance of Esau, yet his mercy endures for those who walk in his ways. The confrontation set the tone for centuries to come, a pattern of hostility, surprise attacks, and divine intervention. Each encounter, each skirmish, would serve as a reminder that this was no ordinary rivalry. The blood of brothers, spilled in anger and ambition, was a mark upon the world, a prophecy echoing through the generations. This first prophetic clash revealed the eternal truth. The enmity between Edom and Israel was not a matter of land or wealth alone, but of destiny, of covenant, and of spiritual principle. Every sword that fell, every life lost, was a note in a symphony of divine warning, an early chord in a melody that would resonate through empires and centuries, reminding all nations that God's justice and purpose are inexorable. The hills were silent after the battle, save for the wind carrying the whispers of angels and ancestors alike. Edom had struck, Israel had endured, and the stage was set for a struggle that would transcend generations, a story in which human pride would meet divine will again and again. The first clash was over, but the prophecy, relentless and unyielding, marched on. Long after the first clash of brothers, the world began to churn with the rise of empires, each one a hammer in the hands of the Almighty, each one a warning of the fleeting nature of human power. From the plains of Mesopotamia to the Nile's fertile embrace, kings and conquerors arose, their ambitions vast, their crowns heavy with the weight of nations. Babylon, Assyria, Egypt, Persia. These were not mere kingdoms. They were instruments, shaping history, testing covenant, and fulfilling the prophecies whispered by prophets across the ages. Assyria, fierce and relentless, came like a storm from the north. Its armies, disciplined and unyielding, carved a path of fear across the lands of Israel. Cities burned, walls crumbled, and exiles were scattered like chaff before the wind. Yet, even as Assyria's iron grip tightened, the prophet spoke with clarity. The Lord brings down the proud, yet lifts up his own. Fear not, O Israel, for your God is greater than the nations. The clash of empires mirrored the ancient feud between Edom and Israel, human ambition against divine purpose, but on a scale that dwarfed the first skirmishes in the desert valleys. Babylon followed, a jewel of splendor and terror. Nebuchadnezzar's throne gleamed with gold, yet his heart carried the arrogance of kings who forget God. Jerusalem trembled under Babylon's shadow. The temple's gates threatened, and the covenant people wept in exile. Daniel, the prophet and dreamer, recorded visions that reached beyond the stars. Beasts of iron and clay, horns and crowns, and kingdoms destined to rise and fall. These visions were not just warnings. They were a roadmap of destiny, a revelation that the conflict between nations was also a conflict of spiritual authority. Egypt, eternal and enigmatic, played its part with cunning patience. Pharaohs rose and fell, their armies a persistent threat to the covenant people. Yet in Egypt's deserts and along the Nile, the lessons of Edom echoed. Pride is transient, power is fleeting, and the God of Israel reigns over kings and empires alike. Each river, each pyramid, each tomb carried silent testimony to the futility of opposing divine will. Persia, vast and formidable, stretched its hand across the known world, yet it too bowed unknowingly to the designs of heaven. Cyrus, the anointed king, became a vessel of prophecy, delivering the exiles of Israel back to their land. Even in conquest, the divine hand guided history, turning the ambitions of emperors into instruments of covenant fulfillment. The rise and fall of empires was no accident. It was the theater of God's plan. And the rivalry of nations, like Edom and Israel, was only a single scene in a much larger drama. And yet, the question lingered like smoke over ancient battlefields. Were these empires merely tools in God's hand? Or were they players with their own prideful intent? The answer was both, for history carries the paradox of human freedom within divine sovereignty. Kings plotted, armies marched, and cities fell. But always, always the hand of the Almighty moved unseen, turning the wrath of nations toward His purpose, shaping destinies that no human could fully grasp. In the midst of this chaos, Edom's descendants navigated the shadows of empires. Their mountain fortresses became points of trade and conflict, their allegiance swayed by survival and opportunity. Israel, scattered and oppressed, endured under the weight of foreign dominion. Yet the covenant remained unbroken. Every decree of kings, every siege of cities, every march of soldiers was a reminder that the clash between nations was inseparable from the clash of divine intent. The rise of empires revealed a truth both terrifying and sublime. Human power is immense, yet fragile. Wealth, armies, and cunning can topple cities, yet they cannot overturn covenant. Pride, no matter how towering, bends before prophecy. The stories of Babylon, Assyria, Egypt, and Persia were not just tales of conquest. They were mirrors reflecting the eternal struggle of Edom and Israel. brothers bound by blood, yet divided by destiny. History itself became prophecy, and prophecy history. The stage was set, not for one generation, but for countless generations. As empires rose and fell, one question haunted the nations. Will mankind ever recognize the hand guiding them? Or will they continue to clash, blind to the eternal narrative in which they play a part? The prophets spoke, their voices cutting through time like lightning across a storm-dark sky. From the high places of Judah, Isaiah cried out against Edom. Behold, Esau shall be terrorized, his hidden treasures plundered, his pride laid low. The Lord has sworn, his violence shall not go unpunished. Jeremiah, with tears staining his scrolls, painted a vision of judgment. Nations would rise against Edom, their swords sharp, their hearts merciless, yet all in service of divine justice. These warnings were not threats born of human anger. They were revelations of destiny, etched into the very fabric of history by the hand of God. Edom perched upon the cliffs and valleys of Seir, believed its mountains made it untouchable. The arrogance of Esau seemed eternal. Yet the prophets reminded Israel that pride is a fragile fortress. Your eyes are on the high places, Obadiah proclaimed, but the Lord sees all, and he shall bring you down. The violence done to your brother Jacob shall return upon your own head. Every word carried the weight of certainty, a promise that would echo through centuries of conflict. Even the Psalms bore witness to this tension, as though the holy singers themselves felt the tremor of impending reckoning. Do not rejoice over me, O my enemy. Though I fall, I shall rise again. Though I dwell in darkness, the Lord shall be my light. Here was a reminder to Israel that survival was not merely a matter of swords or walls. It was faith, covenant, and divine protection that would endure while human pride faltered. Ezekiel, vision bearer of Babylonian exile, saw the nations as chess pieces on a board ruled by the Almighty. Edom's treachery, their gloating over Israel's misfortune, was recorded as a warning for all who would take pride in another's downfall. As you have rejoiced at the house of Israel's calamity, so shall calamity come upon you, the Lord declared. These words were terrifying in their clarity. History was moral, and morality was written in the laws of heaven. No mountain stronghold, no cunning alliance, no wealth amassed in secret could evade judgment. The prophetic warnings also carried an urgent lesson for Israel. Endurance, repentance, and obedience were not optional. Turn back, O my people, for the enemy is at the gate, but the Lord is your shield, declared the unseen voice. Every Edomite strike, every betrayal, every act of hostility was a test of faith, a crucible in which the covenant people were purified. Prophecy was not merely predictive, it was instructional, teaching that divine justice is patient, precise, and inevitable. These words, written centuries ago, resonate across the ages. Violence begets violence, pride begets ruin, but the faithful shall see the hand of God move in ways unseen. The warnings were stark. Nations that seek to destroy God's chosen, that trample upon covenant and righteousness, will themselves fall. The spiritual law was immutable. Edom's arrogance and Israel's perseverance were not just earthly matters. They were echoes of a divine plan, unfolding inexorably through generations. Could these words be unfolding even now? Every mountain of pride, every alliance built on human ambition, every act of cruelty recalls the ancient prophecies. The warnings were not merely for Edom. They were for all nations who challenge covenant, all empires who forget the sovereign. all hearts hardened against the mercy and justice of God. The scrolls of prophets, the songs of psalms, the visions of seers, they are a mirror, reflecting both the past and the present, urging all who hear to discern the patterns of eternity. The voice of prophecy is relentless, unwavering, and precise. Edom may strike, Israel may falter, but divine judgment moves as certain as the sun, rising over the hills of Seir. The warnings echo still, pride invites ruin, treachery calls for recompense, and covenant shall endure beyond the ambitions of kings and empires. The mountains of Seir may seem distant now, their cliffs weathered by centuries, but the shadows of Edom and Israel stretch across the modern world. The ancient feud, etched into the bedrock of history, has not vanished. It has transformed, manifesting in the tangled alliances, whispered threats, and strategic calculations of today's nations. Borders may shift, flags may rise and fall, but the patterns remain. Pride, ambition, and the struggle for survival replay the drama of Esau and Jacob on a global stage. Israel, reborn in its ancestral homeland, stands as a beacon of endurance. Yet around it, the echoes of Edom's hostility can still be heard in the political tensions, the encroaching threats, and the clandestine maneuvers of neighboring powers. Nations that once plotted from shadows now operate with modern armies, sophisticated technology, and the weight of international influence, yet their motives echo the same ancient envy. A desire to dominate, to suppress, to bend others to their will. The Middle East, a theater of strategic ambition, reflects the spiritual and political clashes of old. Iran, with its regional ambitions and ideological fervor, can be seen as a contemporary shadow of Edom, challenging the covenant people with rhetoric and military posturing. Russia's interventions and strategic alliances resemble the old empires stepping onto the stage of prophecy with the weight of history in their hands. Even distant powers drawn into the vortex of conflict play roles they do not fully comprehend, mirroring the ancient dance of nations in which Edom and Israel first faced each other. Yet this is not merely a story of threats and borders. It is a reminder that prophecy is not confined to scrolls or stone. It breathes in the headlines, the political debates, and the calculated moves of modern governments. The patterns of history repeat, but they do so under the scrutiny of an all-seeing God who weaves human ambition into a tapestry of divine purpose. The tension between small nations and superpowers, between the faithful and the prideful, mirrors the cosmic struggle first witnessed in the deserts and valleys of Canaan. Even the cities and strongholds of today carry echoes of ancient prophecy. Jerusalem, its streets crowded with modern life, still bears the weight of covenant, history, and expectation. Every international summit, every act of aggression or diplomacy is shadowed by the lessons of Obadiah and Isaiah. The warnings against pride, against violence, against betrayal are as relevant now as they were when first spoken over the mountains of Seir. The lesson is clear. The past is not dead. It is alive in the present. Modern superpowers and regional conflicts are a continuation of ancient rivalries framed by technology and politics, but driven by the same human impulses. Edom's envy, Israel's perseverance, the rise and fall of empires, all echo in today's headlines, reminding us that prophecy is unfolding before our eyes. We live in a world where the ancient and the modern collide. The rivalry between brothers in blood has become a mirror reflecting the struggles of nations today. The question lingers, unspoken yet urgent. Are we witnessing history repeating itself, or prophecy being fulfilled? The answer may lie not in the boardrooms or battlefields of the present, but in the eternal patterns that God has etched into the story of humanity. The ancient feud of Edom and Israel is no longer confined to Scripture. It breathes in the streets, the deserts, and the capitals of the world. The tension is real, palpable, and unfolding in real time, urging the observer to discern the divine hand behind the chaos of modern geopolitics. Beneath the roar of armies, beneath the rumble of missiles, and the clatter of diplomacy, a hidden war rages, a war unseen by most, yet as real as the mountains of Seir or the valleys of Judah. Paul's words echo through the corridors of time. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Ephesians 6-12. This is the realm where Edom and Israel's ancient feud continues, not merely on maps or battlefields, but in the unseen spiritual forces shaping the destinies of nations. Every act of treachery, every outbreak of violence, every alliance forged in ambition is a symptom of this cosmic struggle. Edom's envy, the pride that led them to despise their brother Jacob, is mirrored in the hearts of rulers and generals today. It is a spiritual disease, seeping into the veins of nations, driving decisions that seem human, yet are orchestrated by forces that delight in division, chaos, and despair. Israel's endurance, its survival against impossible odds, is not only a matter of clever diplomacy or military strategy. It is a testament to divine protection. The angels that once guarded the patriarchs, that shielded the faithful from treachery and ambush, are still at work, invisible to the naked eye. When nations rise against God's covenant people, when hatred and ambition mount like storm clouds over Jerusalem, there is a spiritual response, a counterforce of divine will that cannot be measured by satellites or armies. The prophets understood this reality intuitively. Every warning against Edom, every promise of deliverance for Israel, was a revelation of the unseen spiritual currents beneath the surface of history. Wars are fought on two fronts, the material and the spiritual. The political maneuverings, the economic pressures, the threats of modern superpowers, these are shadows of a deeper, eternal conflict. Every prayer uttered for peace, every act of faith, every covenant kept, is a sword and shield in this invisible war. And yet, the spiritual battle is not abstract. Its effects are tangible. Nations crumble under the weight of ambition and corruption. Leaders falter when pride blinds them, and alliances fracture in ways that defy logic. These are the fingerprints of principalities and powers, shaping outcomes beyond human calculation. The struggle is relentless because the stakes are eternal. The allegiance of nations, the survival of the covenant people, and the triumph of God's justice over rebellion. In this unseen war, every believer, every faithful observer, is called to discern, to pray, and to act in alignment with the divine plan. The story of Edom and Israel is not just history. It is a living reminder that behind every headline, every missile, every political calculation, there lies a spiritual battle far greater than any human conflict. The future of nations, the preservation of covenant, and the unfolding of prophecy all pivot on this eternal struggle, invisible to the eye, but undeniable to the heart. The horizon darkens with the weight of destiny. Clouds of war gather, not just over deserts or cities, but over the very soul of the earth. The ancient feud between Edom and Israel is reaching its ultimate crescendo, echoing through the corridors of history and into the present. Armageddon is not a distant tale. It is a shadow stretching toward us, its edges already visible in the tension of nations, the unrest of peoples, and the trembling hearts of leaders who sense a power far greater than themselves. Mountains tremble, valleys echo with the cries of preparation, and Jerusalem, the city of covenant, of promise, of divine presence, stands at the epicenter of the coming fulfillment. Here, the threads of prophecy, woven through millennia, converge. The feuds of brothers, the enmity of Edom, the endurance of Israel, all are about to meet their divine reckoning. The king, whose arrival has been whispered through generations of prophets, moves toward the stage of history with inexorable certainty. The armies of the world may muster, their banners fierce, their weapons advanced, but they cannot alter what has been decreed. The visions of Daniel, the warnings of Ezekiel, the declarations of Obadiah, they all converge into a single, undeniable truth. God's hand is moving, and history bends beneath it. The ancient Edomites, whose pride and envy once threatened the covenant people, face a judgment that transcends time. Every city built on arrogance, every plot conceived in hatred, every alliance forged to dominate will tremble before the fulfillment of divine justice. And yet, in this coming storm, there is hope. Israel, the small nation that has survived against overwhelming odds, stands not by might alone, but by covenant, by faith, by a God who remembers every promise. The king comes not as a conqueror of nations for pride, but as the righteous judge, the protector of the faithful, the shepherd returning to gather his flock. The Mount of Olives will witness wonders beyond imagination, the skies splitting with the brilliance of his presence, and the earth trembling at his command. Edom's enmity, like a shadow, will be consumed in the light of justice. The prophetic words will be fulfilled, as sure as the stars that watched Esau and Jacob struggle in the night. The nations that sought to dominate, to oppress, to erase the covenant, will see the limits of their power. The cosmic scales will tip, and what once seemed insurmountable will crumble under the weight of divine authority. For those who watch and understand, the signs are unmistakable. The modern conflicts, the political tremors, the rising tensions in the Middle East, they are not isolated events, but the prelude to a fulfillment written before time began. Prophecy moves from the realm of scrolls and ancient texts into the streets, the skies, and the hearts of every observer. The world stands at a crossroads where history, destiny, and divine purpose collide. In the coming fulfillment, the drama of Edom and Israel reaches its cinematic climax. Every act of hatred, every echo of envy, every remnant of rebellion faces the reality of God's justice. And Israel, the covenant people, will not stand alone. Behind them, a power unseen yet omnipotent moves, ensuring that what was promised will be fulfilled. The end is not chaos, it is resolution. The ancient feud of brothers transforms into the eternal testimony of God's sovereignty, justice, and faithfulness. The heavens watch, the earth trembles, and the stage is set. The king comes, and history, long twisted by pride, envy, and ambition, will finally bow to the divine script written from eternity. The story of Edom and Israel reaches its thunderous finale, yet the echoes still shake the earth. Brothers turned enemies, nations forged in envy, and covenants tested through fire, all converge in a moment that stretches beyond time. History, prophecy, and destiny collide on the plains of the present, and the heavens watch with unblinking eyes. Edom's pride, though fierce, cannot withstand the coming justice. Israel, though small, stands shielded by covenant and faith, a testament to God's unwavering hand. The king approaches, and with him comes the reckoning. The proud will fall, the schemers will crumble, and the faithful will witness the fulfillment long promised by prophets. This is not mere story, it is prophecy alive, breathing through our wars, our nations, and our choices. Every headline, every tension, every trembling heart carries the pulse of what has been written from eternity. Prepare your hearts. Watch with eyes wide open. Engage with the revelation. Subscribe, like, share, and comment to illuminate others with these truths. The saga of Edom and Israel continues, not just in history, but in the living moment, and those who stand with understanding will witness the final triumph of God's justice and covenant.